Hey everybody, what's going on? Slick D Gamer, Scott W. Perry here, and welcome back to another edition of Retro Chronicles, where we're going to take a look at the history of the WWF WWE video games. Where I last left off, we took a look at one of the greatest overall games, WrestleFest in the arcades, and while that game introduced an element that has been standard in match video games ever since. The next console game that came out really emphasized it, and that was the Steel Cage. And 1992 was a very interesting year for the WWF at the time. It was the WrestleMania 8 was pretty much many consider to be the end of the golden era, which began with 84 at the Rock and Wrestling Connection. As a matter of fact, I did a recreation of WrestleMania 8 in my archives. If you want to check it out, just click on the link up on one of these areas. And you can check out my painstakingly attempts to recreate and just tweak a few things here and there for it. I had a lot of fun doing it, so check it out. But it was definitely a transitional year. However, for video games, it was the same deal. Super Nintendo, Genesis were big by 1992, and but the NES was still getting some attention, and there were still a lot of games coming out of it. So being that WWE had a license with Acclaim and LJN, there was still room for games to come out. And in 1992, the NES came out. They came out WrestleMania Steel Cage Challenge. And this game, I'll admit, overall, I'll just tell you right now, it is not that good. Graphically, it's not too great. You have an element of a cage, but there's no ropes, and you can slam people in the cage or not. But what really got me in this game is the roster for this. And in this roster, you have, you have returning favorites. You got Hulk Hogan, Randy Macho Man Savage, Million Dollar Man Ted DiBiase. All have been in previous video games. However, it was the additions to this game that really got me excited when it came out. Because two of my all-time favorites, and they're in my top 5, are in this game, making their video game debut. One is Roddy Piper, and the other one is Bret the Hitman Hart. All right. In addition, you have the Undertaker making his console debut in the NES. You also have Erwin R. Seister. So you have Money Incorporated here, well represented. Rounding out the NES list is Jake the Snake Roberts, who had been a mainstay for a long time. He was in WrestleFest, so it was good to see him on a console game. Also making his video game debut, Sid Justice. And finally, the Mountie. Okay, yeah, nobody liked the Mountie. Nobody, but it was a solid 10 wrestlers, and the gameplay was okay. There weren't a lot of moves. It was punch, grapple. You hit both buttons, you can kind of do like a power bomb, and if you run around the ropes, if you hit button A, you could do like a splash, looks like a flying clothesline, and then the other button would be a drop kick. It was just regular and tag team and steel cage matches. There is a championship mode for both WWF World and WWF Tag Team, which is the first time you saw in console versions. I remember playing this. I made Roddy Piper the champion, and for me at the time, when it came out, I thought that was exciting. So the NES was on its last leg, so this was a decent game for it. It's become a little bit collectible. I picked this up for about $30 a couple of years ago when I redid my game system. It's now, it's now up to like 70 or 80, with the boom and everything. But overall, I thought this was good. Again, the roster really makes it. I mean, if you look at the cover right here, you got Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, Undertaker, and the Mountie, who I've told looks the same today. I haven't met him. I've seen him at a few things. Dresses like the Mountie, but but overall, I thought decent. Now, this was not the only version that it came out on. Now, in America, by 1992, the Sega Master System was all but dead. However, being that the system was still going strong in Japan, especially in Europe, there were still games being released regularly for the Master System, as they still were for Nintendo. Now, Europe got a Sega Master version of Steel Cage Challenge, but in a way, the 8-bit Sega continued not on consoles, but on handhelds. So whatever came out for the Master System in Europe and Japan would come out those years on Game Gear. And there was a Game Gear version that came out here. And the roster on this, I actually think is just as impressive. as it is on the NES. And this one you have, staying in from the previous game, you got Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Bret Hart, Money Incorporated, IRS, Ted DiBiase, and The Undertaker. So you have 6 out of 10 still in there. The 4 that they included in this one are pretty impressive. Papa Shango, Tatanka, and 2 of the all-time greatest, Shawn Michaels and Ric Flair. Now, in 1991, when Flair came over to the WWF, everybody said in the 80s that a Hogan-Flair matchup was the dream matchup of a lifetime. And this is the first game where you can actually play that. And of course, it's unfortunate it had to be on a handheld. I did get to play this on a Master System emulator, so it's a little bit better on that. But playing it on a Game Gear with the tiny screen and the way that the wrestlers are really tiny on this, the graphics are not that good. It's okay. It's not great, but it is okay. Definitely just for fans on it. Like I said, the roster is pretty cool, and it has the same features as the other ones. Now, you would think that that would be the end of it, as they would be moving on to other systems, other consoles, and you thought that would be the end of it. But no. This game got a little bit of a resurgence in 2018 with a plug-and-play, presenting the 25th anniversary of the game, which, it came out in 1992, so it was really 26. However, a company named Throwback Entertainment, which is a very interesting name because Throwback bought most of the properties of Acclaim in 2006 when Acclaim went belly up in 2004. So they got a lot of the properties, but they also got a lot of the coding that came in with a lot of the games in their history. So they did have the coding of a lot of the WWF games. So Throwback made a deal with WWE to re-release Steel Cage Challenge in a plug and play. So, it's very straightforward, AV connectors. So with a lot of these HD TVs, they still have AV adapters, and it's not great. This one is a reboot of the NES game. So you have 8 of the 10 listed. You don't have Hulk Hogan because at the time he was there was still some problems with him with the tape controversy over a few words he said, and the Mountie were taken out. And in their place was the Ultimate Warrior and Razor Ramon. Very good choices, by the way. Playing the game, you could tell that they were just thrown together. Not much thought was put into it. And being the fact that nobody has finishing moves, so it was okay to just slam it in. It is funny to see the Ultimate Warrior on the main screen where Hogan was. I thought that was interesting. And, and also a note in all the games, it's kind of cool to see Howard Finkel. You have the text, but you see the graphic of Howard Finkel introducing everybody. And their theme music for all of them is pretty intact. I wanted to mention that. And it's across the board for all the games in it. The difficulty on this is a little bit easier, I noticed. So they definitely dumbed down the difficulty a little bit because I think they knew little kids would play this, or nostalgia people. When I did a championship mode playing as the Ultimate Warrior, I only had 6 matches, where in the other games it would be 10. I'm sorry, it would be 9. You would take on the other 9 opponents. So I remember beating the 6th opponent and thinking, okay, I'm going to go to the 7th one. And it's like, hey, and you're new world. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. But, I have to admit, if Throwback was able to do a 25th anniversary of this and they have games from Acclaim, I'm wondering with some other things coming out if they would be interested in doing some other retro titles for WWE, WWF. WWF. I'll get into that in a couple of future episodes because there are some games coming up that I think would perfectly encapsulate that. But overall, WWF WrestleMania Steel Cage Challenge, it's a lot to say, it's a lot to do, but it definitely showed, like the company at the time, it's showing these games are going through a transitional period. At the time, I thought this was going to be the NES version was going to be the last NES game, but nope, we would get one more. That's going to come up in a future episode. And, overall, I think just for the roster, just for the different variations of it, it is a fun pickup, but I would say definitely not amongst the best. All right, so that's it for this one. Next time on Retro Chronicles, we're going to go Super and finally get into the 16-bit era. So definitely check it out when you can. I'm Slick D Gamer Scott W. Perry. Thank you for watching. Take care.